Hi there, it's Gabrielle Nicolay from SpeechKids and Raising Orchid Kids, where we teach little kids to talk and help parents understand their little kids. And Michele Gerstein, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for being here. Michele is a parent who is going to tell us some of her story. So Michele, you came through our Raising Orchid Kids program, but tell people sort of, tell us your story.
So I guess my story in the early intervention world started when my oldest was like 16, 17 months old. So our first two are only 15 months apart. And I was on maternity leave for my second, and I had taken them both to the playground, and we saw these people going in, like all the nannies going into the library, and we're like, oh, something must be good in the library if all the nannies are going, we should go. And we happened upon a Strong Start play group. And Michael wasn't really talking, but I didn't know that he was like supposed to be talking.
Yeah.
So we started going to that. And around 18 months, I was like, shouldn't we be like saying stuff? And they were
this
like,
was your first, right?
yeah, this is my first.
Okay, and I'm going to back it up for a second. So Strong
yeah.
Start is the early intervention program in Washington, D.C. So early intervention programs exist in every county in the country. They're federally mandated. They're locally funded. They work for early identification. So go ahead.
Yeah, so in DC, they run these play groups at the libraries pre-COVID. And there's early intervention, like there was a speech therapist there and OT there. And now they actually have a Strong Start representative that comes to them. Okay. So we started going, and I was like asking a lot of questions. And the speech therapist gave me some things to try, and like none of them worked. And so then around 20 months, we actually got him evaluated. And he got in on a technicality.
Oh, say more.
So you need to be, but at that point, you needed to be delayed in 2 or more categories by 25%. And he was only delayed in expressive speech. But they also checked off that he wasn't like holding the paper when he colored. So they put some like gross motor stuff down, or fine motor. Yeah. And so that's how he got in. But he totally doesn't have like gross or fine motor issues. But I think like, I was just totally honest with the evaluators. I was like, I know there's something wrong. So like, if he doesn't get in, like, what can I do? Like, how can I help him?
So besides the, like, it sounds like most of what you noticed was he wasn't talking.
Yes.
Is that right?
That was the biggest thing at that point. Everything else that I learned later on were issues. I didn't realize we thought they were like cute things, like the fact that he could notice super small things everywhere. Like I would vacuum and he would be like, crawl over and pick up a piece of, like a dust bunny. And I'm like, seriously? He can hear everything. He's really,
like
really
very faint sounds.
Yes. And around that time too, so fire alarms, we lived in a condo next to another condo building, and even fire alarms in the other condo building, as soon as he heard them, he would vomit.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And the vacuum made him vomit. So we would have to like, one of us would take the boys out to like the playground and the other one would vacuum, because we couldn't vacuum around him. So when we started out, like the noises and stuff made him upset to the point that like his reaction was to just vomit.
And so how long did it take you to sort of think, oh, this is something that merits attention? Not that this isn't typical, like you were kind of like, well, this is kind of unusual, but when was it that you were like, oh, this needs treatment?
So honestly, his speech therapist through Strong Start had been seeing him for a couple of months. So he started right before his second birthday. So like May of 2017. And after she had been with him for about 2 or 3 months, she was like, I think you should take him to children's. She's like, I don't know if something else is going on, but just to like cover our bases. And so we took him to get evaluated at children's.
At the developmental clinic, or?
Yeah.
Okay, so she recommended a developmental pediatrics.
Yeah. So we went, not developmental pediatrics. It was a psychologist.
Okay. A child psychologist.
A child psychologist.
Okay.
And so we went there and did like a 2-hour evaluation with him. And then like it was inconclusive. So like 2 weeks later, we came back for like another 2-hour session.
Super.
And at the end of that one, we got like his autism diagnosis. And my husband and I were both like really surprised with like all the things they said that he did, like lining up all of his toys, like being fascinated by the wheels of his toy cars and not just like ramming them into things, getting really focused on details, the fact that he didn't sleep well, and like I said, like the vomiting, like all of those things, they're like are like red flags. Things that we were like, oh, I thought it was just cute that he lined up all his toys.
Well, but this is, and part of the reason I'm doing this parent interview series is exactly for this reason, which is like, we don't know, unless you're a child development specialist, which very few parents are, then you just kind of assume. And, you know, the fact of the matter is most kids are fine. They're going to figure it out developmentally and otherwise, right? And most parents are going to figure out their kids. And so in those moments, what I hear you saying is like, you know, there were parts that were like really hard, like having to arrange to vacuum your house and the kids have to leave. That's a little bit extreme. And you just kind of thought you had to deal with it.
Yeah. And I think it took, and so I just became I was like, whatever these therapists say, like, we're just going to do. Because they all know way more about like this stuff than like my husband and I do. And so like I was like at all the sessions, I ended up having to go like part-time at work so that I could go to all of his therapies. I would have our second like evaluated informally. I'd be like, is he okay? I don't know. Is he okay? Is he okay? Turns out he didn't talk either. But so Michael has apraxia of speech, it turns out. Which if you don't know, it's like, well, I mean, obviously you know, but
yeah, just tell the good people in ways they don't understand. No.
Like your brain knows what you want to say, but your mouth can't do the motor planning to actually say it. And so, but Thomas doesn't have that, my middle one. He just didn't talk. And the biggest reason anyone can say is because his older brother didn't, and they're only 15 months apart. He just learned how to non-verbally communicate. So now we also have a 2-year-old. So they are 6 and 5 now. And we have a 2-year-old who is typically developing and talks, and it blows my mind constantly, because he comes out with like these full sentences. And I didn't even know that was possible for someone so tiny. Like, and it's amazing.
We get used to, and again, like first, you know, it was your first child. He was probably a quiet baby given the apraxia. And you're like, oh, he's such a good baby. He's so compliant. He's so calm or whatever. And maybe he wasn't calm all the time, but that can feel like, and then you look at other kids, or you look at your other kid and you're like, whoa, this is really different.
Yeah.
And so kids are different is the other thing. But kids are different in a range that's, you know,
yeah,
more expected than what you got, clearly.
Yeah, like emotional differences and
yeah,
like
right.
preferences, not like everything makes you vomit.
Right.
That one was weird.
So fast forward us a little bit. They're 6 and 5 now.
Yes.
And just Michael has autism, or Thomas too?
Just Michael.
Just Michael. Okay. And so tell us how Michael's doing.
So that kid is a testament to early intervention. So he had speech, OT, ABA, went to these like clinical psychologist appointments like a champ. And he worked really hard. Like there was a period of time where we were signing, like I could do all the colors, all the vehicles, all his snacks, foods. Like we had like 100 some signs because he was just so desperate to communicate. But he worked so hard. He went to an amazing preschool in the district. The National Child Research Center is awesome. And they helped him so much that now he is super talkative. He has a lot to say. He was, building it up in there. And he has like little friends because we were worried about his ability to like connect with other kids. And he's never going to be a kid with like hundreds of friends. Like he's not gonna, but he gets really close relationships, with a handful of kids, and it's awesome. He's outgoing now. Like he'll talk to people in our neighborhood instead of like hiding behind me. So I'm just so thankful for the years we spent in early intervention therapies, because the support we received, not only for him, but just for us to know how to approach things and how to accept things too. Like some things aren't gonna change. Like he goes through phases of like right now he'll only wear polo shirts and jeans from Target. And like just accepting that, like, all right, like I just, when I want him to dress for something, like I get him a polo shirt that's red for Christmas, or like that goes with what his brothers are wearing, but isn't like the matching outfit that I would have loved to do before.
Well, and that's so interesting too, right? This process of, so I want to do two things. One is I want to highlight 19-month-old, 20-month-old who's not talking at all, who's not really, sounds like wasn't interacting a lot either.
I thought it was nice that he like played by himself and didn't care what we were doing. Apparently that's a red flag.
It's not so great because we're social creatures and we want to be in communication, but and it feels really nice when your little one is playing by themselves and you can make dinner because you're tired.
Well, and I also had an infant.
Right. And you had
at that point. So
God. My brother and I are 14 months apart. I can relate from the other side. But but from 20 months to 6 years, now we've got an outgoing, I heard you say outgoing, confident, has friends, has a lot to say, and it has learned a ton of new skills. And so part of the reason I wanted to interview parents for this series is to show, and I know you now a little bit, you clearly were like, no, we're going to do something. I might feel scared and I might feel worried and I might have all these feelings, but that's not going to prevent me from doing something for my child.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's why I grabbed onto the therapies so much, because I was like, okay, tell me what to do. Like, I'm very type A, and like, obviously you can't fix it, but I'm like, tell me how to fix it. Tell me how to make it better.
Yeah.
And I just like, and he doesn't vomit anymore when we vacuum.
Yeah.
He actually likes to vacuum now. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay. But the other thing I hear you saying, and so this is part of the reason I wanted to contrast these two, is like, did all this therapy, and you buy him the jeans and the polo, right? It's like honing that ability to know when to push and when to let go. And do you feel like you have a philosophy, or like, what's your thinking on that?
I think that it's like, what is the end game? Like, is it more important? And my husband actually said this to me. Is it more important that he wears the shirt or that he's happy in the pictures? Like, and so I was like, dang it. It's a really good point. Like, is my wanting them to match more important than him being comfortable? And so that's where I was like, no, like he should be comfortable. But then there's other things where it's like, no, you need to learn how to like communicate. You need to learn how to like not vomit at loud noises. so that you can function. And so like the end game there is like a little bit more important. So it's just kind of skewed the scale of like, why do I want him to do this? And then kind of evaluating that to see if it's something I want to push. Like, do I want this for me to make my life easier? And sometimes I still push those things because, you know,
because yeah.
But a lot of times it's like, okay, if it's not going to help him in the long run, it's just going to cause him more stress. Like, why are we doing it?
And that's kind of, I love what you said. That is exactly what Orchid Kids force us to do as parents. They force us to ask those difficult questions of like, why is it important that, I love your example of the holiday card, like that kids wear matching outfits on the holiday card. Like, who the F cares? And who's it for? Yeah. One of the things we talk about in our Raising Orchid Kids class is, you know, we do our worst parenting when we're parenting for someone else rather than for the person that we see in front of us and what aligns with our values. And that's a classic example of like, you know, the Instagram says that it's really cute when all your kids are wearing the same outfits. And if that's not working for your family, guess what? You get to make a different decision. And so I think your lived experience is certainly one of like, yeah, orchids are gonna like force you to ask these questions.
Yeah, and evaluate what like really is really important, and well, yeah, pick your battles, right? But it's just on like a bigger scale.
Yeah.
I feel like there's kind of a different set of rules that we like live by.
Yeah. How does that inform what you're doing with your younger one? How does your experience with your number one inform number three?
So I'm way more relaxed with him. Like I'll let him like do more stuff. Like if he's not, like I was a little bit worried about talking. Talking is always my thing because I had two nonverbal 3-year-olds that before, when he was like 15 to 18 months, again, the other two speech therapists, I was like, see David, tell me about him. What should he be doing now? You know? And they're like, it's okay. And then like at 18 months, like everyone said what happened with the older two, he just started talking and I was like, whoa. And so I think I'm just so amazed by just having a totally typically developing child, that I'm not as like, oh my gosh, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I think probably the tips from having an orchid kid of like pick your battles and like what's really important have just helped me be less stringent and stressed about like having to have everything perfect, and just kind of like letting them lead a little bit more. My poor middle I had evaluated by like everyone because I was like the clinical psychologist at Children's, they're a great there in DC, and he was like, no, Thomas is fine. He just doesn't talk. He doesn't have any sensory issues. He's like super social and super affectionate. Like he loves everyone. He talks to everyone. Talks to everyone. But so just back to like personality differences, they're so different. But I think because still I was still like shell shocked, for lack of better terms, from Michael, that I was like, someone tell me what's wrong with Thomas and what I need to fix with him.
Right. And that's super interesting, actually. If we're not aware of our own reactions there too, like we can go kind of the other direction where we're like, something's wrong, the other shoe is going to drop. Like it really is this fine, it's like labor and delivery, right? If you like white knuckle it, you're going to be in a lot more pain than if you just kind of relax into it and do the things that people tell you are going to help.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
And I think, and even like, I got like that when David got to like the 15 to 18 months, 'cause I was like, this is when everything went off the rails for the other two. Like, what's going to happen? But then he actually started doing things. So then I was able to calm down, but there was still like, I was fine as when he was an infant and like through to like 15 months. But that's when I was like, oh no, is it going to happen again? Like, is it me? Is it something that like we're doing as parents that's like, you know, producing children that don't talk?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so like that, there was still that like twinge from going through it with the other two.
Yeah.
But I think now, you know, like there's things that I tried to force Michael to eat a whole bunch of different stuff that like never worked. And now I'm like, whatever you want to eat, David, I don't care. Just eat. Like,
and the food is like a whole other issue. We're going to talk about that another time, I think.
yeah. But like, just like an example of something that I was like super obsessed with Michael and so concerned about.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, yeah, just get food in your mouth.
What advice do you give to parents, or do you have for parents who are worried about their child's development?
I think get them evaluated, whatever your early intervention program is, wherever you are, or just reach out. Like if you have a connection to any sort of speech or OT therapist that deals with small children, like ask them what they think informally. And if you, once you do get into those programs, ask questions. Like I just kept asking, and things were coming out of left field, right? Like I knew what autism was generally. I'd never heard of apraxia before. And so I just kind of like took the approach of, these people are the experts. They know way more than me. Like I just need to follow their guidance to help us like survive. So I think that'd be my biggest advice, is just to like find a good speech therapist or OT and just ask and let them help you and guide you.
And it sounds like the advice that you got, because I want to qualify what you said in a second, but it sounds like the advice that you got made sense to you and meshed with the way that you wanted to both treat your children, raise your children, teach your children. Yeah. Because there are times when parents are talking to therapists who are not a match. And so I think, you know, go with your gut in terms of like who you end up with, but yes, please reach out.
And we got extremely lucky. Like I am still close with his original occupational therapist. And she was the one that introduced us to what we have in DC, the Katie Beckett waiver.
Oh, right.
Like she's the whole reason we got that, because I had no idea what it was, and she encouraged me to apply. And for those of you who don't know, it's a Medicaid waiver program that waives the parental income requirement for children with special needs. And so it paid for a ton of stuff for Michael. And actually it's not available everywhere, but
it's not, but there is a webinar available on the Raising Orchid Kids website where you can purchase this webinar and get a lot of information. Michelle, you did a fabulous job with that. It was really
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but without her telling me, I would have had no idea. And so there's just so many things that when you're in this world, you learn about and know about, but when you're first coming in, it's all Greek.
Yeah.
So to have someone that can translate it and like kind of compartmentalize, like, here's what you need, here's what you could use right now. And just finding therapists that you can trust and confide in and that end up loving your kids as much as you do, is an amazing asset.
Yeah. And your kids actually do not see me or anybody else at SpeechKids, but one of the things that we do at SpeechKids is provide, number one, speech therapy, but also developmental information. So if you're watching this and you have questions, you should absolutely feel free to reach out. We offer, a 15-20 minute sort of consultation on the phone to talk about your concerns and see what a next good step would be. Oftentimes we're referring people to their early intervention programs And so that, you know, it's something you can do immediately. Parents can self-refer. The evaluations are free. They are required by law. They sometimes take a little bit of time.
But there is a required timeline.
There is a required timeline. Exactly.
So they can't take extremely long. Like it can feel like a really long time, but like it's been like 2 months. Each step has to like be completed to keep their getting federal funding.
Exactly. So yeah, thank you so much, Michele. I know this was helpful for lots of parents.
You're very welcome.
Take care.